Hello YouTube. I want to make another video today, and I want it to be about the very famous Pascal's wager that's used by a lot of theists when they try to argue with a non-theist or a skeptic or someone who's having doubts. They propose, and in case you're unfamiliar with Pascal's wager is essentially that even if there's a small chance that that faith is real or God is real, the consequence of not believing in God is so great. So wouldn't it be better to live and to force yourself to believe, if that's even possible, which I doubt it is, but wouldn't it be better to believe in something and not lose everything when you die? And so that's kind of the proposition that a lot of theists use, and they wrap it up in different contexts, and they don't always necessarily call it Pascal's wager, but that it comes in many forms, like, well, if I'm right, you're wrong. When we die, I'm going to heaven, you're going to eternal damnation. And so they posit that as something like, well, even maybe we'll never know who's right or wrong in this life, but wouldn't it be better to essentially have an insurance policy in the form of faith? And so I think I've heard some rebuttals to this. I've heard some atheists that just claim that this is a logical fallacy, and they just basically dismiss it on the merits of its argument, and they don't kind of unpackage it a little bit more. But that's what I'd like to do. So for a couple of things I'd like to point out up front is that in all reality, what's interesting about theists, unless they're a pantheist and they just believe that all gods are real, and they're a Christian today and a Muslim tomorrow and a Buddhist the next day, or all of them at the same time, which is arguably obviously impossible, right? Because almost all forms of theism require exclusionary belief, as in you only believe in their one God. But let's pretend like it was possible to be a pantheist, which I don't think anyone claims to fully be that. But anyway, what's so interesting is that almost every theist, for the reason I just described, themselves don't take up Pascal's wager on their own. So in other words, a Christian could have the same discussion with a Muslim, and they would both say, well, what if I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to wake up and see Allah in paradise? Or the Christian could say, well, what if I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to wake up and see Yahweh, and you're going to be burning in eternal damnation? So as much as a theist can turn around and use Pascal's wager on a non-theist, in all reality, the theist is just as well practiced at refuting Pascal's wager as you are. The next thing is I don't think I've heard very many atheists or skeptics or agnostics really propose the counterpoint to Pascal's wager. Well, what if the atheist is right, or what if the agnostic is right and the theist is wrong? So I don't think it logically follows that it's the atheist or the non-believer who has everything to lose, and it's the theist who has everything to gain. I think if the agnostic worldview happens to be correct, which is what I believe, but if it happens to be correct, then what has the theist lost? And their basic argument right now is, oh, well, we don't lose anything. But is that actually true? Is it actually true that if you live your life according to a very specific ideology, doctrine, or religion, that you don't lose anything? And I think that there is grounds for an argument that you do lose something. So let's pretend that you're an evangelical, or let's pretend that you're a Muslim, and first of all, you make an early decision from the outset that you will only marry someone that follows the same faith, which many of the world's main religions, I wouldn't say they require it, but it's very heavily encouraged that you marry someone of your own faith. So therein, right there, they're excluding lots of other people who don't necessarily believe what they believe from their pool of potential people with whom they spend the rest of their life. Furthermore, especially the more devout individuals, not only will they not marry someone who is a nominal Christian or a nominal Muslim, but they won't marry people who who are not devout in their practices. I know for me, growing up in a very devout evangelical home, I knew that whoever I started to get into a serious relationship with, a consideration that my family would make in terms of how much they valued or liked the person I was with would hinge on things like, well, how involved are they in the church? What ministries are they in? What types of mission trips do they go on? Do they tithe? Will they teach your children, our grandchildren? Note the possession there. Will they teach them what we want them to teach them about who God is and who Jesus is, etc.? And so what you see from this is that you're cutting off large segments of the population with whom you're allowed to really invest yourself in and invest your time in and invest your emotional well-being, and you turn that around and you're not allowed, well, I don't want to say you're not allowed to invest your time in them, but the time that you do invest in them is actually spent on trying to get them to come into the faith exactly as you see it. So what I think a counter proposal to Pascal's wager for the theist is, okay, well, what if I'm right? What if this is the only life that we have? What if you're not an eternal and immortal being? And what if your purpose actually isn't to believe these things and to live a life of servitude to an eternal being? But what if in all reality all we have is, I don't want to say the present, but is your lifespan, is the people that you come in contact with, to establish meaningful relationships with them. And to get further down, that rabbit hole, I would say, what if there are many theists, many religious people who, as they would phrase it, struggle with wanting to live either a non-binary or a heterosexual lifestyle, and they devote themselves to what's the best way to describe it? They devote themselves to battling those feelings and battling those desires. And so they spend their entire life resisting what they are and not allowing themselves to take pleasure or to take enjoyment or to seek connection with other people that are like that. And so in other words, they literally spend, if the atheist is right, they spend the one life that they have chasing away the things that would actually give them connection and meaning and a strong relationship and bond, not only with themselves but with other human beings. So again, whenever I say these things, I'm not saying them because I'm trying to bring anyone over. I know some people of faith that I would say believe it so strongly and so unquestioningly that even if we dug up a living, breathing, missing link from somewhere deep in sub-Saharan Africa, and we could verifiably prove, wow, this is a hominid that clearly demonstrates a middle step between apes and human beings. It's the living, breathing fossil. That they would reject that and say, nope, I choose not to believe it. That's something that Satan did to try to confuse us all. But I think that on the other side of the spectrum, you have the individuals, and I hear this talked about in churches, I hear this talked about by even pastors. You have individuals that, quote unquote, as they phrase it, wrestle with faith, struggle with doubt. And so these are individuals that, where their mind pops up warning signs or red flags and says, there's some things that I'm struggling to understand here, or I'm struggling to believe. And those are the kind of people for whom I really think the wager I'm proposing actually has some merit, right? So if you're the kind of person like I was who just found it really, really hard to accept and to believe all this stuff, I tried for a very long time to do things that the Bible says to do, or to do things that other believers say to do, which is essentially try to beat your mind into submission to make you believe something that that reality just tells you, no, this isn't real. And that was the most miserable I've ever been in my life, was when I felt like I was wrong for having doubts. I was doing something wrong. There was something wrong with me, and I was trying to beat my consciousness into submission. So I think that's what you stand to lose. If you live your entire life trying to beat yourself into submission and you die and there's nothing after your death except for nothingness, and your one existence was spent making yourself purposefully miserable to believe in something, then I don't think it's fair to say, well, if I'm right and you're wrong as a Christian, or as a theist, then I've lost nothing. I don't think that's true. If you're the kind of person that has, as the Bible describes it, the faith of a child, and it's what you believe through and through, no matter what someone could prove to you, sure, you're not there's no dissonance within yourself. You're not miserable. You're not hating yourself daily. You're not wanting to beat your mind in submission. You believe it and you're happy, and then more power to you. But if you are the kind of person that quote unquote wrestles with doubt or struggles in your faith, and you spend your entire life trying to beat yourself into submission, only allowing yourself to have tangential relationships with people of a different faith or of a different lifestyle than you, you're closing off relationships that you could have that could be deep and meaningful, or you're lamenting aspects of who you are based off of things that you desire to do, that your faith tells you are sinful and wrong arbitrarily. There's actually a multitude of things that you have to lose if you're wrong and you're beating yourself into submission like that, instead of living the life that's still valuable and worthwhile and can invest and bring goodness from other people, can encourage and love and support other people. You have a lot to lose. So I don't buy Pascal's wager one iota. If you're a theist, more than likely you decline to take Pascal's wagers for other people's faiths, and you also do have something to lose. So I'm not saying this again to try to convince anybody, but what I'm saying is if you're someone who is struggling and you're on the fence and you're quote unquote wrestling with doubt, and someone's used this against you and you've had a hard time coming around it, this is one way of realizing, that it's not a very good argument. And it's one that most theists themselves have already declined to take when it comes to other religions or other worldviews. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.